Picture yourself standing in a Roman camp on the very edge of the known world. The cold bites your face, the smell of smoke and iron fills your nostrils, and your shield arm aches with a familiar dull throb. Your knees have stiffened over countless dawns, your hair has lost its color, and the trumpet blares at daybreak, just as it has for 20 brutal winters. You have trudged through the muddy quagmires of Germania, endured the blistering, relentless heat of Syria, watched brothers in arms fall in the misty highlands of Britain, and carried the crushing weight of Rome on your shoulders for so long that your body now feels more like worn leather than living flesh. So, what actually happened when a Roman soldier became simply too old to hold the line? When the fresh, eager recruits started outrunning him, and the empire had already consumed the absolute best years of his existence. Here lies the first genuine surprise. Rome rarely envisioned a warm, comfortable, or gentle retirement. There was no quiet chair by the hearth, no heartfelt gratitude from a grateful state. The empire operated purely on usefulness, iron discipline, and a strict, unbreakable contractual bond. As long as you could march, obey orders without question, and strike when commanded, the war machine kept grinding forward. Rome didn't care for your feelings, it cared for measurable results. Your worth was calculated solely by how well you held the shield wall. But the moment your service concluded, or your body finally betrayed you, several distinct paths lay ahead. Which path you took depended entirely on your specific unit, your rank, your emperor's whims, and one piercing, brutally honest question. Had Rome decided you were still worth the cost of rewarding? In the imperial army, the phrase "too old" rarely meant a white-bearded elder trembling over a wooden cane. In most cases, it described a man in his 40s, worn down, covered in countless scars, and carrying more hard miles in his bones than most civilians could ever fathom. He was a man who had given roughly 20 years to a legion, or about 25 to an auxiliary cohort, and who could still shatter an opponent's jaw, despite his joints screaming in protest every single night. By the time discharge arrived, you weren't truly ancient. You were simply exhausted and ground down. If your service record remained absolutely spotless, you walked away with what the Romans formerly called an honorable discharge, the missio honesta. This wasn't merely a polite farewell ceremony. It was a complete legal transformation, a true rebirth. It was the state's official, undeniable admission that you had fully paid your debt in blood, sweat, and unquestioning obedience. In Roman terms, this was the absolute best ending a common soldier could dream of, because it meant you weren't being discarded like a blunted, broken tool. You were being elevated into a veteran, a title that carried immense weight and genuine respect, and sometimes that weight meant real money. Under Emperor Augustus, the empire actually established a dedicated military treasury specifically to fund these discharge bonuses. A common legionary could walk away with 12,000 sesterces, a considerable fortune that represented years of meager pay consolidated into one life-altering final settlement. Imagine that exact moment. After decades of sleeping on cold, hard ground and constantly gambling with death on foreign soil, Rome finally places a price tag on your lost youth and your endurance. It says, in effect, this is precisely what your prime years were worth to us. However, Rome didn't always reward its aging soldiers with a heavy pouch of silver and a cheerful farewell. Very often, especially under commanders like Julius Caesar and Augustus, veterans were granted plots of land, settled into newly established colonies, and repurposed as sturdy, reliable anchors of Roman influence in freshly conquered or reorganized regions. So, when you grew too weak for the sword, Rome might simply hand you a plow instead. And make no mistake, this was not an act of kindness or softness. It was pure, cold, calculated strategy. A veteran farmer, tilling the remote frontier soil, was still actively serving the empire, just in a different uniform. The promise of land was seductive, but the harsh reality often involved clearing unforgiving forests, dealing with hostile native neighbors, and learning entirely new trades overnight. You could build a house, marry securely, father children, and live with status, yet the land was rarely in sunny Italy near your birthplace. More often, it was a provincial outpost on recently subdued ground, surrounded by locals who vividly remembered that men exactly like you had once arrived clad in steel and blood. This reveals one of the most crucial truths. Retirement for a Roman soldier rarely meant going home. After decades away, home had effectively ceased to exist. Your real bonds were with your brothers in arms and camp towns, so Rome planted you exactly where it needed you. Even your old age remained a strategic cog in imperial policy, stabilizing road networks, pacifying restless provinces, and injecting a hardy military backbone into local Roman culture. If you served as an auxiliary soldier, the conclusion held an even more dramatic twist. Most auxiliaries enlisted as non-citizens without legal rights. After completing their full term, they could receive a bronze military diploma, a document confirming their brand new status, including full Roman citizenship and legal marriage rights. Contemplate what that meant on a profoundly human level. You didn't just leave the army, you stepped out as an entirely different man in the eyes of the law, with a new identity inside the political fabric of the empire.
We are so proud.
Those diplomas were not sentimental souvenirs. They were life-altering legal instruments that protected your family and marked the precise official moment when years of foreign obedience finally bought you full entry into the Roman world. For countless men, growing too old wasn't just the end of warfare. It was the very first time Rome genuinely embraced them. So, what did veterans actually do once the armor hung up? Some turned to farming, some became merchants, others pursued crafts, and many evolved into local strongmen, their scarred faces and disciplined movements inspiring both respect and fear. They settled near forts and growing towns, actively helping to sculpt civilian communities out of military spaces. The transition could elevate a man to local prominence, but it could also leave him stranded between two worlds. No longer a soldier, yet never fully a civilian at heart. Even before formal discharge, age could shift duties. A soldier less agile in the front ranks might prove invaluable in camp administration, logistics, training fresh recruits, or gate guard. Rome was ruthless, but it was never stupid. A seasoned hand who understood camp rhythms and how panic spread in battle remained incredibly useful. He became a living manual of war, watched closely by younger recruits, his grim silence before a fight often teaching more than any officer's rousing speech. Sometimes the story didn't end with discharge. In moments of crisis, veterans were recalled as evocati, men who had completed their time but returned because commanders prized their knowledge. They were old wolves, brought back not to lead wild charges, but to steady the nerves of green troops. Some answered because Rome never truly left their blood. Centurions, with savings and connections, stepped into stronger civilian lives as military rank translated directly to prestige. Not all survived the full term. Medical discharges, missio causaria, existed for shattered bodies and damaged minds. Benefits varied, showing Rome measured compassion through bureaucracy. Conversely, a dishonorable discharge, missio ignominiosa, stripped all privileges for serious offenses. Your final years depended on enduring strict discipline. Here is the brutal truth. Most Roman soldiers never grew old. They died from wounds, infection, disease, and countless miseries that stalked ancient armies more faithfully than glory. Asking what happened to survivors means speaking of a select few, and survival itself was a victory. This explains veterans' immense political weight. Emperors knew discharged soldiers were reservoirs of loyalty and trained violence. Rewarding them secured the empire. Cheating them risked violent upheaval. Not every veteran found marble glory. Some squandered their cash, Some farmed barren land, and many struggled with civilian rhythms. Imagine such a man at dusk, scarred, loosened sandals, wine in hand, eyes drifting to the road. He has land, a wife, children, citizenship. But inside, the camp endures. Rome released his body, but never his instincts. That was the deepest price. Yet age brought a harsh honor. His scars and limp became evidence that he had stood where others fled. The system held a quiet irony. Rome didn't keep or release you out of love. It did both because organized reward maintained discipline. If recruits believed service ended in disgrace, why endure? So Rome built a cold bargain: obey, survive, and leave with money, land, or status. The fate of old soldiers reveals something massive about Rome itself. Its gratitude was military, sharpened like a blade. Emperors sometimes delayed rewards, so your future was never secure until papers were in hand. For the soldier standing after 20 years, that uncertainty was maddening. He was waiting to see if the empire would honor its word. In the end, what happened? Some left with money, some with land, some with citizenship. Some moved to quieter duties, some broke medically, and some fell into disgrace. Rome recycled its soldiers into farmers, colonists, trainers, and symbols. The old soldier wasn't thrown into shadows. If he survived, he simply moved from the frontier of war to the frontier of civilian life, where his scars still carried imperial weight. Even when fighting ended, Rome found a use for you. If it didn't, you learned that glory was loud, but survival was the real prize. And that, perhaps, is the most Roman ending of all. Cold, practical, and yet deeply human in its unforgiving logic.